Hi Hannah and family. I've got the bits together to show you what I use first of all when washing the trumpet. So the first thing to say, I've got this plastic box, and I sized up the plastic box. Just pull out your trumpet from the case here, so you can see it's just a bit longer than the trumpet, and nice and deep, so that you can get it completely submerged under the water. So the handy thing with it being plastic as well is that sometimes the surfaces in a bath or something like that might scratch the lacquer on the trumpet, whereas the plastic is a softer material than the lacquer, so it doesn't scratch it. I then have a few things. I usually get a tea towel, just really for drying stuff afterwards and laying the slides on. Normal washing up liquid is what I use. I've got a variety of brushes. I've got a little brush here which is called a mouthpiece brush. Often you can buy there's a mouthpiece brush for a few quid from an online eBay shop or whatever. And obviously that give both ways in and out. I'll show you that later. And then a few bigger brushes that sometimes they just help to give in and out of the slides to give them a bit more of a scrub. And that one I tend to use because that's about the right size to go in and out of the valve cases with plenty of soap. Then that will break down any oil build up and grime that's there amongst the oil to get rid of that. And these are the two really useful ones. These are like long lengths, they're rolled up. I'll just unroll it to show you. That's a long length. It's got a head with a brush on one end and then just a loop on the other. And then you just push that through. It's like a flexible wire but coated in plastic. You push that through and then kind of pull it out the other end, or you can push it that end through and pull the brush through after it. So it's quite a good way of cleaning the grime out, and do that a few times when you're washing it. And this one's a similar sort of one, but it's metal. It's not plastic coated. So it's probably not quite as kind on the instrument, but it's a slightly narrower head on it, and that's double headed, so you can sort of push that through and then pull it through the other way. And so I've been using this for years and years. They're not that expensive, and they do last for ages, so they're well worth getting. The only other thing I'll probably add to that is just maybe a dishcloth, just generally, give stuff a wipe with when you've got it together. So that's the main stuff that I use. In terms of the water, warm bath temperature, the sort of temperature that you would be happy to step into, really, I would say. If you go much hotter than that, there's always the risk that it can affect the lacquer and that could burn off it. It has to be very hot really for that to happen, but there is a risk. But if you had it a level that you were happy to get into it, then that's probably about the right temperature to use. So we'll go and get some water ready and show you the next stage in a few moments. Okay, so we're in the bathroom, and you see I've just got the big plastic box inside the bath. Just rinse out bits of muck that are built up from last time. And then just run the hot water into it. It's a bit awkward because it doesn't quite fit under the tap properly here, but get it going. Okay, so we've now got a reasonable amount of warm water in there. Not too hot, not too cold, just right, like the Three Bears. Good squirt of washing up liquid in there. That's needed really just to break down the oil and the grease that builds up inside the trumpet. Just give that a splash around just to evenly distribute it through the water. Right, so now it's time to take apart the trumpet, and I'll take you through that. So yeah, this tends to take place on the bathroom floor. Open it up. So I think it's a good idea at this point just to just use the case to hold everything safely as you're taking it apart. So I usually start by taking the valves out. So unscrew the valve. Again, just lay them down. A tip with valves really, they don't take kindly to being dropped valves, and if they are dropped, they can bend, and that stops them moving freely. So if you do it sat on the floor, then if you do drop them, they're not going to drop a long distance. Whereas if you stood up or a table or something, then you're probably going to really damage them if you drop them by accident. But so do it this way and just sit them in the trumpet. Take off the caps from the bottom of the valves. These sometimes can be a bit tight. Sometimes using one of those rubber washing up gloves or something like that can help get them off. Really, pliers are an absolute last resort because they can damage the brass. And then by taking out the valves first, it means you can pull the slides out very easily without having to worry about pressing the valves down. So just one by one, pull those out. You've got your locking end stop nuts on your third valve slide there. Again, just loosen that off just far enough for the slide to come out. Pull the slide out. Likewise with your first valve slide, just pull that out. And so those slides are all out now. Oh, and the mustn't forget the main tuning slide there. So there you've got your trumpet with no slides in it, no valves in it, just that nut there which I just left loose. And now that's ready just to put into the water like that. So to put the trumpet into the water, give it a swash around a bit just to let the air bubbles come out, and then that's filled up most of the pipes. And just leave that to soak now for 15 minutes, something like that, just to help loosen off all the grime in it. And then again, carefully, just find a space, put the valves in there. Some people say it's better to remove the pads from the valves. You can unscrew the valve tops and take them out. I have to say, in all the years I've been doing it, I've never bothered with that particularly. And it doesn't seem to have a big detrimental effect on them. I think the principle is it keeps them soft if you don't take them in and out. Again with the slides, just put them in, hold them up just for any air bubbles to come out. And then they can soak together with the trumpet for 15 minutes or so. The bottom of the valves, the second valve slide. So that's all in there nicely. So just dry my hands. Oh, and the mouthpieces as well. Mustn't forget those. And just leave it all in there together for a bit, just have a bit of a soak. Okay, so it's been soaking for a bit, and now we'll get these long brushes and give it a bit of a... So I tend to leave it under the water if I can, then just push the brush through. And I like to watch at the end to see how much muck comes out, see how desperate it was. Oh, goodness me, Hannah. Looks like there's an old Mars bar stuck in there and a bag of cheese money and flavour crisps. So I do that a few times, just in and out, just to make sure we've got all the gunge out. This is what makes a real big difference to the sound when you come to play it next, because all of that just affects the flow of the air through it. It's a good idea as you're pushing the tube in, just to sort of move it, backwards and forwards a few times. So work your way round. So that was the main, what's called the lead pipe, which is from where the mouthpiece goes in through that section. I'm now going to do this one, and the first valve slide goes, and then the second, and then the third valve. So I'll just work my way through those three. One of the things just to watch for as you're pushing the brush in and out is particularly where there's a bend, quite a sharp radius, when they're going into the valves, the tubes. The brush can get stuck a little bit there, so just do it gently so as not to get it jammed. I've had it jam a few times over the years, but I usually just persevere and it comes loose eventually. So that's the middle one. Now the third valve slide. So just holding it with one hand, pushing the brush in and out with the other. And now the other bit of the main tuning slide where it goes around into the valve. Plenty of grime coming out with that one as well. So now I push it through the bell and then all the way around until it comes into the valve case through that section. You don't tend to get much muck in that area anyway. And if you look down through the valve case, you can sometimes just see the brush appear at the end there, but just a reasonable clean through is fine. Just to get rid of the worst of the muck there. And then take the, as I have this slightly thicker brush here that I use in the valve cases, just to give them a good scrub. But again, just backwards and forwards a few times in each of the valve cases. Should get rid of any grime build up there. So that's those done. Now onto the slides themselves. So the third valve slide, obviously you can see with the shape of that you can't get the tube all the way round. So I just doing it under the water, push it until it stops, in and out a few times, swash the water in and out just to clear it through, and then through the other side as well. A few times on that one. There's lots of grime coming out, so it's going to make a big difference, I think, to how it feels when you play it next time. And then the brush goes right the way through the tuning slide there. Quite a bit of muck coming out of that one as well. So I say just push it part of the way in and move it backwards and forwards a few times. Sometimes it's worth sort of pushing it in from the other side and all the way through. It can catch a little bit on the inside on the water key. Just be aware of that. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. And then the first valve slide again under the water, in and out a few times, both sides there. That looks good. And then even though it's only little, the second valve slide there, again a few times. It won't go all the way around it, but it gets rid of the worst of it with the soak and everything. And then what I'm also doing is just on the slides itself, just using my fingers and just giving them just a bit of a rub, just to remove any bits of grime, you know, from the grease. Now on the valves, just I used, so I've got this little cheapo set. I think it probably came from a pound shop or somewhere. But then what I do is I just put it under the water and then just push it through each of those bits of the valves just to get rid of any grime that's built up in there. And that's fine. Do that with each of the valves, one by one. Number 2, and there's number 3. That's all come loose nicely. Some bits of grime that had loosened up with the warm water and the soap, that's just come straight out now, so that's nice and clean. And then sometimes you get a little bit of grime build up in the bottom of the valve bottoms and screw on. You can just use the edge of the brush there and give them a bit of a clean. They don't need to be immaculate there. I mean, they're there just to pick up the bits of dirt and the valve oil that comes off the valves. So just so it's got rid of the worst of it there. That's fine. And then so I've got the little mouthpiece brush there. So take the mouthpiece in, doesn't go all the way through, but just in and out a few times that way, and then in the other way. Just give it a good scrub like that, very simple. I'll clean your other spare mouthpiece as well, because I don't know which one you're using. So that's both of those done. So that's it really. So take all the brushes out of the water, and the main trumpet out, give it a sort of a twist round like that, and then that gets any water out, and then it's pretty clean really. So there's not really kind of any polishing or anything like that to do. The slides themselves look reasonably clean. They just want, when they're dry, just greasing back up, which I'll show you in a few minutes. I put that just back in the case for now with no valves or anything in it. The reason why is just to, it's the safest place for it. And then with the valves, you get a bit of water that builds up in the hole, so you can just give them a little bit of a shake and tap, and then lay them out on a tea towel. All 3 valves. There we go. And then your mouthpieces, as I just generally just lay it all out on a tea towel. Make sure you got any grease to the edge of the slides has come off. Sometimes worth just using the opportunity to check your corks, make sure they're sealing well, and make sure the water key hole is nice and clear. They all look good. And then first valve slide there, yeah, looking nice and clean. And then the 3 valve end caps coming out. I said this is probably as dirty you'll ever have it now, because it's never been cleaned for ages, has it? But oh, the old knees are aching. But yeah, if you're looking the water there, you can see there's quite a bit of grime sitting in the bottom, so it's definitely been a job well worth doing. So say we've got the slides and the valves there, and then the trumpet back in there. And so what I do is just leave that now for maybe an hour, a couple of hours, really, just to dry out. I might just take a dishcloth or a tea towel or something, just give them a bit of a dry. But then just let them dry naturally, really. It's better that way. It's not essential. I mean, many times I've just dried it and put it all back together, greased it up, oiled it, and got on with it. But it definitely works better if you've got the time just to let it dry out naturally. And then when you put all the oil and grease and everything on, there's no water there to affect how well it goes on. So I'll show you that in the next part of the video. Okay, so we're back again, and we're coming to the last part of the cleaning and servicing of the trumpet, and this is putting it back together, of course. So because everything's had several hours actually drying out, so it's all thoroughly dry at this point. So I've got the trumpet here, and the best order I find to put them back in is the reverse to the way we took them out, which is to do the slides first. And again, just a reminder, because when you've got the valves out, you can wiggle the slides in and out freely without having to press the valves down, you see. So it's an easy way of doing it. Now, so I'm going to grease the slides, and I've got 2 different types of grease here. One, I think it's made by a company called Selma, and actually I've changed the bottle to this one because it's easier to squirt it out of. And it's quite a thick synthetic grease, which is, you don't use car engine grease or anything like that, but this thick synthetic grease is really good for it. So I can give you details of what to get there. And then I use this other one, this Hetman synthetic light slide lubricant, which I use that on the 3rd valve slide, because as you get better at trumpet playing, you have to trigger the 3rd valve slide in and out to get your C sharp, your bottom C sharp, all 3 valves pressed, to get that in tune, because it's naturally a bit sharp, so you push the slide out to flatten it a bit. So I think I'll start with that one. And then remember, your 3rd valve slide's the one that's got this lock nut on it as well, so just make sure that's out a little way. Don't have to take it out completely. Then basically just run a bit of this light lubricant. So it's quite a fine oil. It's fine grease oil. It's quite a light type of oil, especially made for trumpets. Now sometimes if it's a bit too loose, I do mix it in with a bit of the other grease. Now the best way to sort of get your slides running smoothly is just to put one side of it in, the side, you know, obviously corresponding to where it's finally going to be. But then just to move that in and out a few times like that, and then that just smears the grease or the oil evenly around the whole slide area. That feels pretty good. And push the slide in, and then move it in and out a few times. That's nice and loose. I always have a bit of kitchen roll to hand just to wipe off the excess oil that gathers at the joints there, and then screw that in. It's important every so often, if you don't to do already, but just to check that's nice and tightly in place, because the slide's quite loose. It's not too bad on this, but some trumpets it literally just falls down when you put it on its end like that, and obviously if you haven't got the stop in the right place, it falls on the floor and dints the end of the slide, and you find quite a lot of trumpets that have been around a few years, the ends of the slides are dinted when they come out like that. So that feels pretty good. So that's the thinner lubricant I use. I'm only going to use that on the third valve slide though, because the other slides can take a slightly heavier one. So now this is this slightly heavier grease. Just take a bit of squirting out. Generally I put a bit on each side like this, and similar on the other one. When it's time to get your hands greasy, just rub that around a little bit there and on there, so it's fairly evenly spread around. Wipe your fingers on the kitchen roll, and then put the first side in, give that a good move in and out, and then the second side in again. Just move that around a little bit, and then put the whole thing in like that. Wipe off the excess there, and then just move the slide in and out a few times like so. That's moving nice and freely now. And so you can move that with your thumb. It's designed so you don't need to do it very often. That's those two slides done. Now the second valve slide, the little tiddly one. Again, just a bit on each like that. Move it around. And again, you can just do a quick move in and out like that, and put the thing in. That's moving very nicely, nice and free. And this, every so often you might find you need to just go back and do this. You don't have to wait until you clean it every time for that to happen. You could just do it just to make sure everything's running well. Now sometimes after you've cleaned it, it's good to just give the main tuning slide a bit of a wipe. So there's a bit of build up of the green gunge called verdigris. I don't know if you've come across that name. Verdigris is a kind of sort of a corrosive type growth you see on brass and copper. Yeah, that's nice. So we just get a bit of grease on each side there, and if it's come out a bit more, plenty on. This also does a job of sealing the slides as well, so you don't get any possible air leak from them. Nice bit on both. Give your fingers a wipe. And so then again, just put the one side in, and then give that a bit of a manipulation there. Same on this one. So it's a good idea to have a tea towel or cloth or something just down on the table there, so that you're not making a mess, because it is grease at the end of the day. It will stain the tablecloth. So push that in, and then just move that in and out a few times just to check it's moving nicely. That's beautiful. That really worked well, that. So it's handy to have a tuning slide. A number of times I've been in bands over the years, and we've gone through the trumpet section and we've said, right, tune up, everyone move your slides, and somebody's slide is jammed solid, and we have to tune to them then, because they can't change the tune. That's running really smoothly, so you won't have that problem. Now the valves. So the valves on them, I've got the numbers on. I don't know whether you knew that, but on the front edge, number 1 there, and that's number 2, and that's number 3, and the number goes towards the mouthpiece end of the trumpet. So your number 1 always faces that way towards the front, number 2 towards the mouthpiece end of the trumpet. So that's kind of a quick way of knowing you've got the valves in the right way. And so you've got the valve guides there. So the way you do it, get your valve oil. I've got your Yamaha valve oil here. It's probably a good idea to put the kitchen roll just underneath it, because it does drip a bit as you do this. And then run it down. I just find the gaps in between the holes in the valve. Plenty down. Make sure it's all around. And then push the valve in. And then spin it round, up and down, round and round a few times, just to evenly coat the inside of the valve casing and the valve with the oil. And then say turn that round, look for the number 1 on there. Yeah, you see the number 1 on it. And then push it in roughly like that. And if you just move that around a little bit, you'll feel it click in. If you just press slightly, I'll do it again. And it just clicks in. And then that's in the right position. So then just, and this is a little bit tricky just to get the thread the right way on these. They're not easy to get the thread on, but they are. It feels right now. So you turn it anti-clockwise a little bit to get it lined up, and then clockwise and put it on. Be careful not to cross thread it on there, because it can damage the thread if you force it. So just take your time and make sure that's properly lined up. Then move the valve in and out a few times like that, up and down. And then that get it moving nice, so that's really working well. So then the same again with number 2. Check I've got number 2. And a nice amount all down the main sides there. Just the sort of greyish area of the valve, that's all that you need to do. And then spin it around a few times like that, just to get a nice even coating. And then say look for that number 2, pointing that towards the end of the mouthpiece goes in, it just clicks in place. And then just tighten the top off. It doesn't need to be dead tight, just finger tight on there. And again, that's moving nicely. And then we'll do the 3rd valve. So again, nice bit down each side like this. There we go. And then pop that in there. Twist it around a few times. Find the number 3 pointing towards the front, and then just click it in place. And then a little bit fiddly, that's why I'm going anti-clockwise just while I'm getting it lined up. You kind of feel it fall into place a bit there. And then that's it. Turn that round. That's the 3rd valve nicely in. And then your bottom caps. Sometimes you can put a bit of grease on the threads on the top and bottom, but I generally don't worry too much about that. Some trumpets, they're a bit harder to get on and off, but this one's absolutely perfect, so you shouldn't have any problems with doing that. It says he's struggling to get the final one on. Oh yeah, it's always the last one into it with these things. That's those done. And there we have it. The whole trumpet is back together again. All the slides nice and loose. Main tuning slide nice and loose. Valves working quickly. Ready for action. And that is it. That is the whole job done. So both mouthpieces are here. Nice and clean as well. I won't play on it, but I'll keep them ready for you, Hannah, to play on next time you get it. So hopefully giving you some ideas there on the bits and pieces to get. And how to go about doing it. Go for it, give it a wash. In terms of how often, you probably need to be looking at washing it maybe once every 1 or 2 months really, ideally. One of the things you can also do, you can just take out the, turn it this way around, you can take out the main tuning slide and then just run some water down the lead pipe bit and then maybe if you've got one of those things with the brush on the end, just to push through it, that can clean off. That's the bit that gathers the most dirt, so that could be just a quick clean. Sometimes that's worth doing, but generally, hopefully you've seen now it's not too hard to do, and you can do that more often. So enjoy your playing, good luck with your exams, and I hope you appreciate how much nicer it is to play a lovely clean trumpet. Okay, bye for now.